Two people, same income, same savings, same city, same year. One buys a home, the other keeps renting and invests every spare dollar instead. 20 years later, I ran the full numbers on both of them, and the result was not what I expected. It wasn't what the pro buying crowd says, it wasn't what the pro renting crowd says either. The truth is more complicated, more honest, and once you see it, way more useful than anything you've heard before. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how the math plays out, year by year, and more importantly, you'll know which choice is actually right for your specific situation, because the answer is different for different people, and nobody ever explains why. Let's fix that, and I'll show you the one number at the very end that determines everything. Stay with me. Ryan is 32. He earns $85,000 a year. He's been disciplined with money for years. He doesn't buy things he doesn't need. He doesn't eat out every night. He's been building toward one specific goal, and now he has $120,000 saved. His plan? Buy a home. His own home. The place he actually lives. Not a rental property, not an investment play. His home. He's tired of renting. He wants stability. He wants to stop paying someone else's mortgage. He wants roots. And he believes, like most people believe, that buying a home is one of the best financial decisions he can make. Claire is also 32. Same income, $85,000. Also has $120,000 saved. But Claire has been doing research, deep research. She's looked at what home ownership actually costs. Not just the mortgage, but everything. The maintenance, the property tax, the insurance, the repairs, the transaction costs on both ends. And she's made a different decision. She's going to keep renting. And every dollar she's not spending on home ownership, she's going to invest. Her friends think she's making a mistake. Her parents think she's making a mistake. Let's find out if they're right. Before we run the numbers, 5 rules, because this only works if it's honest. Rule 1. Ryan buys a $550,000 home, 20% down, that's $110,000. His mortgage is $440,000 at 6.5% interest over 25 years. Rule 2. Claire rents an equivalent home for $2,000 a month. That's the reality in most cities right now. Renting is cheaper per month than owning the same home. Rule 3. Claire invests her $110,000 down payment immediately, and she invests 60% of the monthly difference between Ryan's costs and her rent, not 100%, because nobody actually does that. 60% is ambitious but real. Rule 4. Home appreciation, 4% annually. That's the realistic long-run average, not the pandemic spike, not a crash, the boring middle. Rule 5. Claire's investments return 7% per year, below historical average, deliberately conservative, honest numbers, no cherry picking. Let's go. Ryan signs the papers. He hands over $110,000, plus closing costs, inspection, legal fees, transfer tax. Another $13,750 gone before he spends a single night in his new home. Total out of pocket on day one, $123,750. His home is worth $550,000. He owns $110,000 of it. The bank owns the rest. Now, here's the number. Most people get wrong when they think about home ownership. They think about the mortgage, just the mortgage, but that's not the full picture. Not even close. Here's Ryan's actual monthly cost in year 1. Mortgage, principal and interest, $2,971. Property tax, $527. Home insurance, $130. Maintenance reserve, $458. Total monthly cost of owning, $4,086. $4,086 every month, not $2,971. $4,086. That's the number that matters. Claire's rent, $2,000. Monthly gap, $2,086. Every month, Claire has $2,086 that Ryan doesn't. That gap is the engine of this entire story. What Claire does with it, that's what we're about to find out. Let's talk about that $458 maintenance line for a second, because first-time buyers almost always underestimate this. 1% of home value per year is the standard rule on a $550,000 home. That's $5,500. Sounds manageable, but over 20 years, here's what that budget actually has to cover: a new roof, $15,000 to $25,000; HVAC replacement, $8,000 to $15,000; hot water heater, appliances, flooring, paint, fencing, plumbing; a kitchen that needs refreshing somewhere around year 10. We kept maintenance at 1%, deliberately conservative, in Ryan's favor. In reality, most homeowners spend more. Here's something that stuns most first time buyers. In year one of Ryan's $2,971 mortgage payment, $2,383 goes to interest. Only $588 actually reduces what he owes. He pays $2,971. He keeps $588. That ratio slowly shifts over time, but it takes years before the balance tips. This is why equity builds slowly in the early years. Now, here's where Ryan's bet starts to pay off. At 4% annual appreciation, his $550,000 home grows steadily. Year 5, $669,000. Year 10, $814,000. Year 15, $991,000. Year 20, $1,205,000. And here's Ryan's single biggest advantage in this entire comparison. When he sells, he pays no capital gains tax. In most countries, your primary residence is exempt from capital gains tax up to generous limits. That is a massive, real, legal wealth advantage. Every dollar of that appreciation, Ryan keeps. Mortgage remaining at year 20, about $152,000. Gross equity, $1,053,000. After selling costs, agent fees, legal, he walks away with $1,005,000. Now, here's what I need you to hold in your head as we look at Claire's numbers: $1,005,000. Because what comes next is going to surprise you. One more thing about Ryan before we move on. Something the math can't fully measure. Ryan's mortgage payment is locked. $2,971 in year 1, $2,971 in year 20. It never moves. Meanwhile, rent around him has been climbing every single year. That stability has a value that doesn't show up in any net worth comparison, but it's real. And in retirement, when Ryan's mortgage is gone, his housing cost drops to almost nothing. Property tax, insurance, maintenance, that's it. No rent, no landlord, no lease renewal, no uncertainty. Keep that in mind. The same day Ryan signs his mortgage, Claire opens a brokerage account. She takes her $110,000 down payment. The $13,750 in closing costs she didn't spend. Total, $123,750. Invested immediately in a low-cost global index fund. One fund, thousands of companies, dozens of countries, annual fee 0.2%. That is it. No maintenance calls, no property tax bills, no strata meetings, no leaky roofs. She just invests and waits. Now, here's the part of this comparison that almost every article and video gets wrong. They compare the mortgage to the rent. They forget to ask what happened to the down payment. Ryan's $110,000 is locked in his home on day one. It's growing, but it's trapped. Claire's $123,750 is in the market on day one. Growing, compounding, free. At 7% annual returns, her lump sum alone becomes year 5, $173,000. Year 10, $243,000. Year 15, $341,000. Year 20, $479,000. She adds nothing extra. Just that first lump sum, $479,000, from money she would have handed to a bank as a down payment. That's the hidden power of starting with a large invested sum. It compounds from a high base immediately. On top of her lump sum, Claire invests every month 60% of the $2,086 monthly gap, $1,252 per month, every month, for 20 years. $1,252 a month at 7% annual return for 20 years. That alone grows to $656,000. $656,000 from $1,252 a month. That's compound interest doing what compound interest does. Lump sum growth, $479,000. Monthly contributions, $656,000. Total portfolio before tax, approximately $1,135,000. Unlike Ryan's home, which is largely tax-free on the gain, Claire pays tax on her investment returns. We'll assume she's used tax-sheltered accounts for a meaningful portion, which any smart investor should. Her effective tax burden on the full portfolio, roughly 10%. Claire's after-tax net position, approximately $1,021,000. Now, before we put those two numbers side by side, one more thing about Claire, because every pro-renting article conveniently glosses over this part. Her rent doesn't stay at $2,000. At 3.5% annual increases, which is historically normal, year 1, $2,000 a month. Year 5, $2,375 a month. Year 10, $2,820 a month. Year 15, $3,350 a month. Year 20, $3,980 a month. Nearly $4,000 a month in rent by year 20, with no equity, no ownership, no guarantee her landlord renews her lease. Ryan's mortgage payment, still $2,971. And in just a few more years after year 20, it's gone completely. Claire has more money. Ryan has more security. Hold both of those thoughts. Now let's put the numbers side by side, year by year. And this is the part that surprises everyone. Year 1, Claire leads by roughly $110,000. She invested her entire down payment immediately. Ryan's equity is almost zero. His early payments are mostly interest. Claire has a big head start. Year 5, Claire ahead by about $11,000. Ryan's equity is building. His home has appreciated. They're nearly even. Claire still ahead, barely. Year 10, Ryan pulls ahead by about $6,000. This is the crossover. Ryan's mortgage balance has dropped meaningfully. His home's appreciation is compounding on a larger base. The no capital gains tax advantage starts showing. Ryan leads for the first time. Year 15, Ryan still leads by about $8,000. Neck and neck, both lines within shouting distance. At this point, the graph looks like a photo finish. Year 20, Claire edges back in front by about $16,000. Claire's compounding has quietly been working. Ryan's equity is strong, but selling costs and the accumulated monthly gap take their toll. Ryan, $1,005,000. Claire, $1,021,000. Gap, $16,000 on $1 million. Let that land. After 20 years, every cost counted, every tax advantage included, every maintenance bill, every month of rent, every investment contribution, the gap is $16,000. That is 1.6%. They are essentially tied. This is the honest answer that nobody gives you. Not buying always wins. Not renting is smarter. The real answer, when you count everything, is that both paths lead to almost exactly the same place, with one crucial difference. Ryan owns a home. Claire still pays rent. Think about what that means at 52, at 62, at 72. Now here's what really matters. Because if both paths lead to the same place financially, then the question isn't which one wins. The question is, which one is right for you? And that comes down to 5 variables. Let me walk through all 5 right now. 4 things push toward Ryan: appreciation, the capital gains tax exemption, his fixed payment while rent rises, and the security of owning his home in retirement. 4 things push towards Claire: a large compounding lump sum from day one, consistent monthly investing, 0 maintenance surprises, and complete liquidity. She can access her money anytime. These forces are almost perfectly balanced in normal market conditions, which means the outcome isn't determined by which strategy is better. It's determined by your specific situation. Variable 1. How long will you stay? This is the most important variable. Not appreciation, not interest rates. This. Ryan spent $123,750 on day 1. Down payment plus closing costs. That money has to be justified by the time he sells. If Ryan sells in year 3, he almost certainly comes out behind Claire. The closing costs aren't recovered. The equity hasn't built. Year 7, roughly even. Year 10 and beyond, Ryan consistently pulls ahead. If you're not confident you'll stay for at least 7 years, the math almost always favors renting. This is why should I buy is actually the wrong question for someone who might move in 3 years for a job, a relationship, or just because they want to. The right question is, how long am I genuinely going to stay? Variable 2, appreciation in your specific market. We use 4% in our model. Change that number. Everything changes. At 5% appreciation, Ryan's home is worth $1,420,000 at year 20. His net position jumps to over $1,200,000. He wins clearly. At 3% appreciation, his home is worth $992,000. Net position drops to around $830,000. Claire wins by nearly $200,000. 1 percentage point, $370,000 difference in outcome. Know your market. Appreciation is not uniform. It varies enormously by city, by neighborhood, and by decade. A home in a high-demand, supply-constrained city is a very different bet than a home in a city with flat population growth and plenty of land. Do your research before you assume 4% is what you'll get. Variable 3. Will you actually invest the difference? This is the variable that kills the renting strategy for most people because most renters don't invest the difference. They spend it. A nicer apartment, a newer car, better vacations, more dining out. Lifestyle expands to meet available income. It's human nature. If Claire only invests 30% of the monthly gap, not 60%, her portfolio at year 20 drops to around $780,000. Ryan wins by over $200,000. If Claire invests 90%, her portfolio reaches $1,150,000. She wins more clearly. The renting and investing strategy is only as good as the investing part. If you're honest with yourself and you know you won't invest the difference, the forced savings of a mortgage may actually serve you better. That's not a judgment. That's just self-knowledge. And self-knowledge is worth more than any financial theory. Variable 4, your city's price to rent ratio. Here's a number most people have never heard of, but it might be the single fastest way to know which direction the math leans in your city. The price to rent ratio. Take the home purchase price and divide it by the annual rent for the same home. Our example, $550,000 home, $2,000 a month rent. That's $24,000 per year. Divide $550,000 by $24,000. A ratio of 22.9, below 15, buying strongly favors. The monthly gap between owning and renting is small. Appreciation, upside is powerful. 15 to 20, buying generally favors for long-term owners. 20 to 25, it's close. How long you stay matters a lot. Above 25, renting starts to look more favorable. Above 30, in most scenarios, the math clearly favors renting and investing. Look up the price to rent ratio in your city. It immediately tells you which way the math is leaning. Variable 5, how fast is rent rising in your market? We assumed rent grows at 3.5% per year. In many cities, that's actually conservative. In hot rental markets, major cities, supply-constrained areas, rents have grown 5% to 8% per year in recent years. If that continues, Claire's rent in year 20 isn't $3,980. It's closer to $5,300 or more. She's spending over $60,000 per year on rents with no end in sight. Ryan's mortgage, still $2,971. In high rent inflation cities, the math shifts significantly toward buying for anyone planning to stay long term. Conversely, in cities where rent growth has been slow because supply is keeping up with demand, Claire's math stays stronger for longer. Track rent trends in your city, not nationally, locally. This is one of the most underappreciated variables in the whole debate. So, should you buy or rent? Let me make this as direct as I can. Buy. If these are true for you, you're confident you'll stay for at least 7 to 10 years. Not pretty sure. Confident. Your price to rent ratio is below 22. The The monthly gap between owning and renting is manageable. You have a stable income, an emergency fund separate from your down payment, and you're not stretching your budget to make it happen. You know yourself well enough to know you won't invest a difference if you rent. Honesty here is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. You want the stability, the control, and the retirement security of owning your home outright. These are legitimate, valuable things. Rent, if these are true for you. There's real uncertainty about where you'll be in 5 years. Career, relationship, city, life is in motion. Renting gives you options that buying destroys. The monthly cost of owning would genuinely strain your budget. A stretched buyer is a vulnerable buyer, one emergency away from disaster. Your price to rent ratio is above 25. The numbers genuinely don't favor buying in your market right now. And critically, you will actually invest the difference. You have the discipline, you have the account, you have the plan, not theoretically, actually. And whether you buy or rent, one thing applies to both paths. Max your tax sheltered investment accounts. Whatever your country offers, use it fully before anything else. The tax-free compounding inside those accounts is one of the most powerful wealth building tools that exists for ordinary people. And most people leave it unused. Don't be most people. Ryan has a home worth over $1.2 million, less than $100 to $52,000 left on his mortgage. In a few more years, it's gone. His housing, cost in retirement, property tax, insurance, maintenance. That's it. No rent, no landlord, no uncertainty. Claire has just over $1 million. Liquid, invested, globally diversified. She can move anywhere tomorrow. She can access her money anytime. She had zero maintenance emergencies and zero surprise repair bills. But she still pays rent. And that bill will never stop. On paper, essentially a tie. In life, two completely different situations. The rent versus buy debate does not have a universal winner. Anyone who tells you it does is selling you something. What determines the answer isn't the interest rate. It isn't the market. It isn't what your parents did. It's how long you'll stay, what your market does, whether you'll actually invest a difference, and what kind of life you want to be living at 60. Run the 5 variables for your situation. Be honest with yourself and make a decision, not a default. If this gave you a clearer picture than anything else you've watched on this topic, hit like. It genuinely helps more people find this video. Subscribe if you want real numbers finance content every week. No hype, no shortcuts, just honest math. And drop a comment, Team Ryan or Team Claire. More importantly, which way do your 5 variables point? I read every single comment. See you next week.